His eyes dark, his smile forced. "My lords," he began, pretending calmly. "This is a misunderstanding. My wife is confused." "Enough, Musa," Amina said sharply, her voice rising above his. The courtier fell silent. "You used my father's trust to take what was not yours. You said you loved me, but you loved only his land. You turned my home into a cage and my heart into a battlefield. I was silent out of fear, but not anymore." Once upon a time, in the quiet northern village of Kagara, nestled between golden hills and whispering palm trees, life moved gently with the rhythm of the wind. The air always smelled of ripe millet, wet earth, and wood smoke from morning fires. At dawn, roosters crowed from every corner. Women sang softly as they fetched water from the stream, and children's laughter echoed across the red sand path. The people of Kagara were simple folk, hardworking, honest, and content with the blessings that the land and sky provided. At the far edge of this peaceful village stood the compound of Malam Danladi, a man respected by all. His words carried weight in the market square, and his kindness had earned him both honor and envy. His farmlands stretched far beyond what the eye could see. Endless rows of cassava glowing under the sun, tall yams climbing strong wooden sticks, and golden fields of maize that swayed like waves in the wind. But his greatest treasure wasn't the land or the wealth it brought. It was his only daughter, Amina. Amina was the heartbeat of Kagara. Her smile was warm enough to soften even the hardest heart, and her laughter carried through the valley like a sweet melody. Her skin shimmered like polished bronze beneath the sun, and her eyes, deep and bright, reflected both innocence and quiet strength. Every morning, before sunrise, she tied her wrapper firmly around her waist and followed her father to the fields. She walked with joy, never too proud to lift a hoe or till the soil. The villagers often said, "Truly, Amina is her father's heart, gentle, pure, and loyal." Many suitors came from near and far, eager to claim her hand. Some brought cows, others baskets of rice or gold. But Amina turned them all away with a polite smile. Her heart longed for something deeper, a love built not on wealth or wealth, but on sincerity. Her father would often say to her, "Amina, wealth fades, but a good heart remains." She carried those words like a prayer in her chest. Then came Musa, tall, soft-spoken, wrapped in the air of quiet confidence that drew eyes wherever he went. He introduced himself as a trader from a neighboring town, a man who dealt in grains and livestock. His voice was calm, his tone respectful, and his smile disarming. He spoke with the ease of someone who knew how to win trust, never too forward, never too distant. His eyes gleamed like hidden secrets, and when he spoke, his words flowed smooth as palm oil, warm and persuasive. The first day Amina met him, he offered to carry a basket of yams she struggled with at the market. It was a small act, yet something in his voice, soft, almost musical, stirred her heart. In the days that followed, Musa found every reason to be around her. He listened when she spoke, laughed at her jokes, and praised her cooking as though he never tasted better. He even joined her in the fields once, pretending not to mind the harsh northern sun, burning his fair skin. The villagers praised him. To them, he seemed perfect, humble, hardworking, and deeply in love. So, when Musa came one evening with his family to ask for her hand in marriage, the entire village buzzed with joy. Amina's father, conscious but moved by the young man's apparent sincerity, gave his blessings after days of prayers and consultations. Amina's heart soared, believing destiny had finally smiled upon her. And as she prepared for her wedding day, her heart whispered the sweetest promise that she had found the man who would love her forever. But fate, unknown to her, had written a very different story. Once again, Kagara woke that morning to the rhythm of drums and laughter, a day meant to celebrate love. The village glowed with joy, and the air carried the scent of jollof, fried meat and perfume. From one end of the dusty road to the other, people whispered, "Amina is finally getting married." To them, it was the union of grace and fortune, the farmer's beloved daughter and the charming trader from the next town. Inside her father's hut, Amina sat quietly as women decorated her hands. Her heart danced with hope. She saw in Musa not just a husband, but a companion, a dream come true. When she looked at her reflection, her eyes shimmered with gratitude. "Mama," she whispered softly, "your daughter is in safe hands now." Outside, the wedding unfolded in full color. Musa looked every bit the perfect groom, tall, poised, and full of charm. But behind that calm smile lay a restless mind, one that calculated more than it cherished. Every gift exchanged, every cheers from the villagers, was a step closer to what he truly desired, the vast farmland of Malam Danladi. When Malam Danladi handed him the deed as part of his daughter's dowry, Musa's heart raced faster than his smile could hide. His hands trembled slightly as he accepted it, not from emotion, but from greed. To him, that document wasn't a blessing, it was a ticket to a life of control and power. While everyone celebrated love, Musa celebrated ownership. Amina, unaware of the storm gathering around her, only saw the gentle husband who smiled at her across the firelight. Later that evening, when the village songs faded and the last guest left, the silence that followed felt strange. Musa's eyes, once warm and soft, had taken on a distant gleam. He began to ask questions, small, sharp ones that slipped into their conversation like hidden knives. How large is your father's farmland, Amina? Who keeps the paper? Does he trust anyone with them? His tone was mild, his lips still smiling, but his gaze was cold, deep and watchful. But Amina laughed softly at his curiosity, believing it was love that made him interested in her father's work. She told him everything. How the land stretched from the river's edge to the hills, how the tenants brought their harvest in baskets, and how her father kept all documents locked in his wooden chest. Each word she spoke was another door opened in her innocence, and another doorway for Musa's ambition to walk through. That night, while she slept with peace in her heart, Musa lay awake, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Outside, the crickets sang softly, but in his mind, numbers danced. Acres, profits, titles, and power. He thought of the farmland and all it could bring him. How easy it would be to take it once he earned her father's trust. And as the moonlight crept across their room, Amina murmured in her sleep, "Alhamdulillah, I'm truly blessed." Musa turned to look at her, that pure face, that unguarded smile, and for a fleeting second guilt pricked his chest, but greed, like a stubborn weed, swallowed it whole. The wedding feast had barely ended. Yet, in the silence of that night, the man who promised to protect her began plotting how to own her father's word. The music of love had faded, leaving behind only the whisper of deceit. The early days of their marriage were golden, or at least, That is what Amina wanted to believe. The mornings began with laughter and smell of fried yam drifting through their small compound. Musa would sit beside her as she pounded millet, teasing her gently, calling her my sunshine, the pride of Kagara. He bought her trinkets from the market, glass bangles that caught the light, small bottles of perfume, and once a soft shower dyed in desert gold. To the eyes of the villagers, they were perfect, the couple that love had truly blessed. Amina's heart glowed with peace. She thanked Allah every night for giving her a man who seemed kind and hardworking. They tilled her father's fields together, their laughter rising with the hums of incense and the rustle of the wind. She told herself that no woman was luckier than she. But even in that sweetness, shadow began to creep, quiet, slow, and almost invincible. Musa began visiting her father more often. At first, Amina thought it was love, that he admired Malam Danladi's wisdom and wanted to learn from him. But their conversations were always about the same thing: the land, the soil, the boundaries, the ownership, and the tenants. Amina noticed that when they spoke of family, Musa's eyes wandered. But when the talk turned to farmland, his gaze sharpened like a blade. One evening, as the crimson sun dipped behind the hills, Amina carried water from the well and passed by the veranda. She heard voices, Musa's and another man's, low and urgent. All this talk of love, Musa's friend chuckled. Don't tell me you are falling for this girl. Musa laughed, a dry, sharp laugh that didn't sound like the man she knew. Love, he scoffed. Once I control Danladi's land, my life will begin. The rest is just patience. Amina froze, her body trembling so hard that the calabash almost slipped from her hands. The words struck her like a whip, sharp, cold, and final. She wanted to run out and demand an explanation, but fear rooted her to the spot. No, she whispered to herself. I must have heard wrongly. That night, as they ate supper under the flickering lantern, she searched his face for truth. Musa smiled as always, reaching across the mat to feed her a piece of meat. His charm was effortless, his laughter warm, but to Amina, something had shifted. His touch felt colder, his eyes too careful. When she asked gently, Musa, is everything alright? You seem distant. He chuckled, brushing her cheek with his thumb. Don't worry your pretty head, my wife, he said softly. A man's mind is a busy place. But his words did not calm her heart, they deepened her fear. Days turned into weeks, and Musa's life became a series of late nights and whispered meetings with strange men who smelled of tobacco and greed. He returned home with dust on his clothes and ink stains on his fingers. When Amina asked him where he had been, he smiled that same careful smile and said, Business, my love, I'm doing it for us. Meanwhile, her father, fragile, aging and trusting, welcomed Musa with open arms. He believed his son-in-law to be a blessing from heaven. Whenever Musa came with papers to sign, the old man never hesitated. He is family, Malam Danladi would say proudly, his wrinkled hands trembling as he signed away what he didn't fully understand. Amina's heart grew restless. One evening, she pleaded softly, Baba, please don't sign anything without asking me first. Something feels wrong. But her father only smiled faintly and placed a gentle hand on her head. My child, he said in his calm, tired voice. Musa is your husband now. He will protect our name. Don't let fear darken your heart. Amina tried to believe him. She tried to hold on to the hope that her love could not be a mistake. But the more she looked into Musa's eye, the more she saw not the man she married, but the stranger wearing his face. And in that realization, love began to taste like fear, slow, bitter and cold, as the wind that howled through the fields at night. The days that followed felt heavy, like clouds full of rain that refused to fall. Amina could no longer recognize the peace that once filled her home. The laughter that used to echo through their compound had gone quiet. Musa's face, once gentle and open, had become distant, always shadowed by thoughts he wouldn't share. He now spent more time with men from neighboring towns, men whose eyes carried the sharpness of greed, and whose voices lowered whenever Amina approached. Sometimes, when dogs fell over Kagara, he would disappear to the small village bar by the old mango tree, where men gathered to drink burukutu and boast about their business conquests. The bar was a dim, noisy place. Smoke coiling through the air, laughter loud, and coins clinking against wooden tables. There, Musa sat with his new friends, men who spoke of land, power, and quick wealth. Malam Danladi's land is a gold mine, one of them whispered one night, slapping Musa's shoulder. You just need to be smart, my friend. Old men don't live forever, Musa smirked, lifting his calabash cup. Don't worry, he replied, his eyes gleaming. I'm already halfway there. Each morning, Amina would wake before dawn, light the fire and wait for Musa to join her for breakfast. But he often left early, muttering about business at the land office or meetings with traders. At first, she believed him, but soon she began to notice the small lies, the folded papers he hid beneath his prayer mat, the way he avoided her eyes when she asked simple questions. One evening, while sweeping their room, Amina's hands brushed against something stiff beneath the mat. She pulled it out carefully and unfolded it. Her breath caught. It was a land transfer document, stamped and signed. Her father's signature was there, trembling and uncertain, beside Musa's bold one. Her vision blurred as tears filled her eyes. The paper trembled in her hands. Ya Allah, she whispered, her voice breaking. What have you done, Musa? That night, when he returned, she sat quietly by the door, her eyes swollen from crying. Musa, she said softly, holding out the paper. What is this? For a moment, he froze. His expression flickered. Guilt, surprise, then coldness. He walked towards her, took the document from her trembling hands, and tore it in half with a smile. You shouldn't go through a man's belongings, Amina, he said evenly. You are my wife, not my guard. His voice was calm, but it carried a threat she had never heard before. Her heart sank deeper. You used Baba's trust, she whispered. You made him sign something he didn't understand. Musa laughed, not the soft, loving laugh she once knew, but one that chilled her blood. Your father is old, he said, and I am the man of the family now. Everything he owns belongs to us, he paused, his eyes narrowing. To me. The words hit Amina like a slap. She stared at him, disbelief flooding in her soul. But you said you loved me, she whispered, her voice breaking. I did what I had to do, he said, turning away. Love doesn't feed a man, Amina. Land does. He walked out into the night, leaving her alone with the echo of his words. Amina sank to her knees, clutching her chest as silent sobs escaped her lips. That night, she prayed with all her heart, not for herself but for her father, whose trust has been betrayed. Ya Allah, she cried softly. Open his eyes before it's too late. Don't let Musa destroy what my father built with his hands. But fate, cruel and patient, had already begun its work. The papers were signed, the land was shifting hands, and Amina, once the pride of their village, now sat in the quiet of their home, realizing that the man she called husband was slowly turning her world into dust. Days turned slower after that night. The house that once echoed with laughter and love had become heavy with silence. Amina moved through it like a shadow. Her spirit dimmed, her smile faint. Musa no longer hid his true self. He stopped pretending. He spoke to her with a tone that carried neither kindness nor patience, only command. Every evening, he visited the village bar by the old mango tree, where the air was thick with smoke and the scent of brukutu. There, his greedy friends cheered him on. "Malam Danladi's land is yours now, Musa," one of them shouted, slamming his cup down. Musa grinned proudly. "Almost," he replied, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Once the final papers are done, I'll be the biggest landowner in Kagara." The men roared with laughter. To them, it was just business, but to Amina, it was the slow breaking of her word. At home, she waited every night, her lamp flickering weakly beside her. When Musa stumbled in, his breath sour with drink, she would rush to help him remove his shoes. "Musa," she whispered one night, "please stop going to that place. Baba is getting weaker every day. We should be by his side." He waved her off with a tired sneer. "You and your old man worry too much. Let him rest, he has had his time." Amina's heart sank. Her father, once strong as the earth itself, now coughed constantly. His body, now weak like a dry leaf. Each time she visited him, she found him sitting under the neem tree, staring at the fields that once thrived under his care. The land no longer belonged to him, not in papers, not in power, only in memory. "Baba," she whispered one afternoon, kneeling beside him, "you must rest. Let me speak to the elders, maybe they can." But Malam Danladi only smiled faintly, his eyes dull yet gentle. "My daughter," he said weakly, "this word is not ours to keep. If Allah allows, justice will come." Amina held his hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. "But Baba, you trusted him," she said, her voice breaking. "You trusted Musa more than anyone." He sighed deeply, closing his eyes. "A man's true heart, my child, is revealed only when he has power." Those words stayed with her long after he fell asleep. That night, she lay awake listening to the wind whistle through the trees. Her mind turned between love and grief. The man she had once prayed for now stood on the other side of her prayers, distant, cold, and dangerous. The next morning, as the sun rose over the golden hills, Amina went to serve her father breakfast and found him coughing violently, his fragile body trembling with each breath. She screamed for help and knelt beside him, holding his head in her lap, her tears falling on his face. "Baba, please don't leave me," she cried. "Please." He opened his eyes one last time, his voice barely a whisper. "Amina, my child, be strong. The truth always finds the wicked." Her heart shattered as his words faded into silence. The world around her blurred. The sound of the wind, the rustling of the leaves, even her own sobs seemed distant. That evening, when Musa returned, his shirt reeking of palm wine, Amina sat by the doorway, eyes red, heart broken. "He's gone," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "Baba is gone." Musa blinked once, then sighed as if relieved. "May Allah rest his soul," he muttered carelessly, walking past her into the hut. Amina stared after him, her tears drying on her cheeks now. In that moment, something inside her shifted. Her grief turned to resolve, soft, quiet but burning deep. She looked out towards the fading sunset and whispered, "You took my father's land, Musa, but you will never take his peace." And for the first time in weeks, she stood not as the broken wife of a greedy man, but as her father's daughter, the daughter of Malam Danladi, and the land he loved. The house had never felt so empty after her father's burial. Silence became Amina's only companion. The villagers came with words of comfort, bringing bowls of rice and kola nuts. But when they left, the weight of her loss pressed down harder. The laughter of children outside, even the rustle of the wind, everything reminded her of what she had lost. Musa didn't shed a single tear. On the third day after her father's death, he returned from his secret meetings, wearing a new kaftan and a smug smile. "The elders has confirmed it," he said, tossing a folded paper on the table. "The land is officially mine now, Amina." Amina froze. The words felt like knives slicing through her heart. "Yours?" she whispered. "Even after Papa's death, you still want more?" Musa shrugged, pouring himself a drink. "The dead don't farm, Amina. The living must eat." Her eyes welled with tears, but this time she didn't let them fall. She simply turned away, her body trembling. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding with anger and disbelief. The image of her father's tired face haunted her, his final words echoing, "The truth always finds the wicked." The next morning, Amina rose before dawn. The air was cool, and the first light of the day touched the fields that once belonged to her father. She stood by the window, her eyes burning with unshed tears. "Baba," she whispered, "they may have taken your land, but they will never bury your legacy." When Musa left that morning, bragging to his friends about expanding his property, Amina followed at a distance, her veil pulled low over her face. She watched as he sat under the mango tree with his usual crew, laughing, drinking and making plans to sell part of the land to strangers from the city. "Once I sell half," Musa was saying, "we will be rich. I will build a new house in Kano and leave this dusty village behind." His friends laughed and clapped him on the back. Musa the big man, they cheered. Amina's stomach twisted. Her hands trembled as she hid behind a tree, listening. She realized then that Musa would stop at nothing. Not loyalty, not love, not even her father's grave would slow him down. That night, she returned home quietly and began to gather her father's old papers. The ones Musa hadn't found, hidden beneath her father's old hut, were letters, land map, and one small brown envelope with her name written in her father's handwriting. Her heart raced as she opened it. Inside was a note that read, "My daughter, if ever the world turns against you, remember, truth is buried, not dead. Seek the village clerk. He holds the copy that can free our name." Amina's hands trembled as she read the words over and over. For the first time since her father's death, a flicker of hope lit her heart. When Musa returned that night, drunk and humming, she greeted him calmly, her eyes steady. He noticed the change. "What are you looking at?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Nothing," she said softly, turning away. But inside, a storm had begun to rise, one that would soon shake the very ground he walked on. As the moonlight fell on her face that night, Amina knew her days of silent tears were over. The woman who once bowed her head in fear was gone. In her place stood a daughter of the soil, patient, wounded but unbroken. She whispered into the night, her voice steady as the wind. "Musa, you may own the land on paper, but I carry its spirit in my blood." The next morning broke with a soft mist hanging over the village. The call to prayer echoed faintly through the still air, mixing with the distant cry of a rooster. Amina wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders and stepped outside, her bare feet brushing against the cool, dewy grass. The sky was pale, painted in the soft gold of early dawn, a reminder that every darkness gives birth to light. For the first time in weeks, her heart carried purpose. She tucked her father's notes inside her wrapper and whispered, "Baba, guide me." Musa was still asleep, sprawled across the mat, the smell of palm wine heavy on his breath. Amina moved quietly, her step light as wind. She She knew the village clerk's house sat near the market square, an old mud hut with crooked roof and stacks of dusty paper by the window. The man, Malam Ibrahim, had been her father's friend, loyal and honest, though age had slowed his steps. When she reached his home, the sun was beginning to rise, its golden light spilling over the hut. Amina paused, her chest tightening with nervousness. She knocked gently on the wooden door. "Who is there?" a raspy voice called. "It's me, Amina, Danladi's daughter." The door cracked open and Malam Ibrahim stood there, his eyes clouded with age but still sharp with wisdom. "Amina," he whispered, studying her face. "Ah, my child, you have your father's eyes. What brings you here so early?" Tears filled her eyes as she held out the note. "Baba said you have something that could help me." Malam Ibrahim's expression changed. He motioned her inside, glancing around before closing the door. The small room smelled of old paper and burning incense. "Your father was a good man," he began softly. "Before he died, he told me to keep a copy of his land documents safe. He feared that greed would come knocking after his death." Amina's heart thawed. "Do you still have it?" The old man nodded slowly. He walked to a wooden chest at the corner of the room, unlocked it and pulled out a small brown folder wrapped in cloth. "Here," he said, handing it to her carefully. "This is the true record. The land still belongs to Malam Danladi and his rightful heir." Amina took it with trembling hands. "Ya Allah," she whispered, her tears falling freely. "Baba was right. The truth wasn't dead, only buried." Malam Ibrahim's heart softened. "You must be careful, my child. Your husband is not a man who will surrender easily. Guard this paper with your life." Just then, a loud knock rattled the door. Amina's heart stopped. "Who is there?" the old man called out. A deep voice answered. "It's me, Musa." Amina's blood ran cold. How did he find her? Malam Ibrahim's eyes widened. He quickly snatched the folder back, sliding it beneath a pile of old records. "Hid in there," he whispered, pointing towards the narrow curtain behind the table. Amina slipped behind the curtain, her breath shallow. Musa pushed the door open, his face hard and suspicious. "Malam," he said, forcing a smile. "I hear you keep records of every farmland in this village. I came to see my father-in-law's file." Malam Ibrahim adjusted his cap calmly. "Why would you need that, son? The land dispute was settled long ago." "Still," Musa said, stepping closer, "I like to keep my papers clean. You understand?" His voice carried that same oily charm that once fooled everyone. But this time, it sounded dangerous. "I will see what I can find," the old man said, pretending to search through his pile. "Come back tomorrow." Musa frowned. "I'll return in the evening," he said, and turned to leave, his eyes scanning the room one last time. For a brief moment, Amina thought his gaze lingered near the curtain, but then he stepped out, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Amina stepped out slowly, her hands shaking. Malam Ibrahim pressed the folder back into her palms. "Take it now," he said firmly. "Go home through the back path. No one must see you." Amina clutched the folder to her chest, her heart pounding, as she slipped through the narrow path behind the clerk's house. The morning sun broke through the mist, a single ray falling across her face like a silent promise. She looked up at the sky, her voice trembling with both fear and hope. "Baba," she whispered, "the truth is in my hands now, and I swear I will not let him bury it." The wind rustled through the trees as if the earth itself had heard her vow. The day after Amina's secret visit to Malam Ibrahim, the air in the village grew thick, heavy with heat and whispers. The sun burned harshly over the thatched rooftops, and the usual laughter of the villagers seemed to fade beneath the uneasy quiet. To Amina, even the wind sounded different, like it carried secrets between the trees. She sat in the backyard pounding millet with trembling hands. The fodder was hidden safely beneath a loose brick behind the cooking hut. Every sound made her heart jump. The bleating of goats, even the chatter of passerby. Musa had left at dawn, but lately, his absence didn't bring peace. They brought fear. For days now, his behavior has changed again. Sharper, more unpredictable. He no longer smiled when he entered the house. His questions has become traps dressed as casual talk. Amina, he would say, "You don't visit anyone these days. Where do you go when I'm away?" His eyes would search her face, like a hawk cycling prey. She would lower her gaze and whisper, "I stay home, my husband." But inside, her heart would drop with the weight of unspoken truths. That evening, Musa went to the village bar, the same smoky, noisy place he always went to. His friends, a group of greedy men who thrive on this seat, sat in their usual corner, mugs of brukutu in hand. The lantern light cast shadow across their faces, making their eyes gleam like snakes. Musa slammed his cup down. "Something is not right," he muttered. "That woman, she's hiding something." His friend Sani leaned closer, his voice dripping with mockery. "You mean the pretty one who used to smile like the moon?" "Ha, Musa, perhaps she has found someone new to talk to." Musa's jaw tightened. "No," he hissed. "Amina is not that kind. But she went somewhere yesterday morning. Someone saw her near the market, near Malam Ibrahim's hut." The table fell silent. One of the men whistled low. "Ibrahim, the crack," he said. "He's the one who keeps all the land records, isn't he?" Musa's eyes darkened. "Exactly." He slammed his hand against the table. "She's up to something, and I will find out what." Back at home, Amina sat by the smoke lay lamp inside her hut, pretending to sew while her thoughts raced. She could feel the storm gathering, invincible but near. The night was quiet, but her soul wasn't. She rose and stepped outside, staring at the moon that hung full and bright above the rooftops. "Ya Allah," she whispered, "give me courage. I'm only one woman, but truth is all I have left." The sound of footsteps broke her prayer. She turned. Musa was back. His eyes glimmered under the moonlight, sharp and unreadable. "You are awake," he said, his tone low and strange. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. He took a step closer, his smile forced. "You have been busy lately, haven't you, my wife?" Amina's throat tightened. I only walk and pray." Musa nodded slowly, cycling her like a lion around prey. "You see, my beautiful wife, people talk, oh. They say you were seen near Malam Ibrahim's hut. What business could a woman have with an old clerk?" The air between them tightened. Amina's heart pounded so hard she thought he might hear it. I went to the market," she said quietly, "to buy oil and groundnuts." Musa studied her face for a long, silent moment. Then he smiled, that dangerous smile she had come to fear. "I see," he said finally. "The market. He turned and walked away, but she could feel the suspicion still burning in his eyes. That night, he did not sleep beside her. Instead, he sat outside beneath the neem tree, drinking and staring at the stars, his mind turning like a blade. Inside, Amina wept quietly, her hands clutched over her heart. She could feel her father's spirit near, whispering strength into her trembling soul. "Don't give up, my child," she heard in her mind. "Truth will always outlive lies." But outside, Musa whispered to the night, his voice low and venomous. "If she betrays me, She will learn what happens to those who stand in my way. The moon watched over them, both, one praying for light, the other plotting in darkness, and somewhere between those two hearts, destiny waited, silent and patient, for its next move. The days that followed were tense and brittle, like a dry leaf waiting for the smallest wind to crumble it. Amina moved carefully around the house, her every step measured, her every word guarded. She could feel Musa's suspicion clinging to the air like smoke. Thick, choking, inescapable. He spoke less now, but watched more. His eyes followed her everywhere, cold, calculating. Even when he smiled, it never reached his eyes. The house that once echoed with laughter now paused with silence, a silence that screamed. That evening, the sky turned strange. Heavy grey clouds rolled over the village, swallowing the sunset whole. The wind howled through the trees, sending dust swirling through the compound. Amina felt her heart twist. It was as if the heavens themselves could sense what was about to unfold. She had just returned from fetching water when she noticed the door to their room open. Musa never left it that way. Her breath caught. Inside, the mat was rolled back, and beneath it, the loose brick where she had hidden the folder was gone. Her hands went numb. "Ya Allah," she whispered. Then she heard it, his voice behind her, cold and sharp. Looking for this, Amina turned slowly. Musa stood at the doorway, the brown folder in his hand. Rain began to fall, a soft drizzle that drummed on the roof, but inside the room, it felt like a storm. "Musa," her voice trembled. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," he cut in, his eyes blazing. "You went behind my back. You betrayed me, Amina. You thought you could keep this from me." He threw the folder onto the table. The paper spilled out. "You and that old fool Ibrahim, planning to take what's mine." "It will never be yours," she cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You tricked my father. You used his trust, his love. You..." Before she could finish, his hand struck her across the face. The sound cracked through the room like thunder. Amina staggered backward, her vision blurring. For a moment, the only sound was the rain, now pouring harder, washing against the mud walls. Musa's chest rose and fell rapidly, his breath heavy with rage. "You think you can shame me?" he hissed. "After everything I have done?" Amina's voice broke. "What have you done, Musa? You destroyed everything good between us. You took my father's land, and now you want to take my soul too." He grabbed her wrist, his grip cruel. "You don't understand the word," he spat. "Land is power, Amina. Without it, a man is nothing. I have worked too hard to let a foolish girl ruin that." Tears streamed down her face. "You call it power, but it's greed, Musa, and it will consume you." He laughed bitterly and pushed her outside the hut. "If you were not my wife, I would have thrown you out already," he said coldly. But you will learn, Amina. You will learn to keep quiet." He gathered the papers, now soaked and torn from the rain, and stormed out into the night. Amina lay there, her cheeks burning, her heart shattering into pieces she could no longer gather. She called against the wall, her tears mixing with the rain running down her face. Lightning split the sky, bright and merciless. In that blinding flash, she saw her life as it truly was. A dream turned nightmare, and a love story turned wound. When the rain finally ceased, she knelt on the wet ground. Her voice was soft, trembling but steady. "Ya Allah, give me strength. If this is the path I must walk, let me walk it with courage. If he has stolen my father's land, he will not steal my spirit." The thunder rumbled one last time, as if heavens were answering her prayer. At that moment, Amina, bruised but unbroken, vowed that the battle was not over. The storm had come, but she was still standing. The morning after the storm was still and cold. The earth smelled of wet soil and sorrow. Amina sat by the doorway, her face swollen, her spirit aching, yet her eyes, red and weary, carried a quiet fire that had not been there before. She had cried throughout the night until there was no tears left, and now what remained was resolved. The truth had cost her peace, her marriage, and nearly her soul, but she could not let it end this way. Her father's voice echoed in her heart. A good heart remains, my daughter. Never let darkness silence you. As the first light of dawn crept over the village, Amina rose. She tied her wrapper firmly, covered her bruised face with a scarf, and stepped out. Each footstep on the damp ground felt heavy with memory of her father's laughter, of her mother's song, and of the land that had fed generations. That land was her heritage, her father's blood, and she would not let Musa bury it in deceit. By the time the village woke, words had spread already. Amina, the daughter of Malam Danladi, had gone to the palace of the district head. People whispered as she passed, their eyes wide with a mist of pity and admiration. Some women covered their mouths in shock. Others nodded with quiet respect. Inside the palace courtyard, the elders sat in a circle. Grey-bearded men in flowing robes, their staffs resting beside them. The district head, Alhaji Yusuf, lifted his eyes as Amina entered. "Amina," he said gently, "what brings you here so early, my child?" She bowed respectfully, her hands trembling as she held out the soaked, half-torn folder. "My father's land," she said, her voice breaking. "Musa has stolen it through deceit." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Musa himself arrived moments later. His eyes dark, his smile forced. "My lords," he began, pretending calmly, "this is a misunderstanding. My wife is confused." "Enough, Musa," Amina said sharply, her voice rising above his. The courtyard fell silent. "You used my father's trust to take what was not yours. You said you loved me, but you loved only his land. You turned my home into a cage and my heart into a battlefield. I was silent out of fear, but not anymore." Her voice trembled, yet it carried the strength of truth. She turned to the elders, tears glistening in her eyes. "If my father's spirit could speak, he would say, justice belongs to those who keep faith, not to those who steal it." Malam Ibrahim stepped forward then, holding the original document he had kept hidden. "What she says is true," he declared. "Here is the proof. The land remains in the name of Malam Danladi. Musa forged the transfer." Gaps filled the courtyard. Musa's face was drained of color. "You lie," he shouted, lunging towards the clerk. But two guards stepped in, grabbing his arms. The district head slammed his staff on the ground. "Enough! This village has no place for thieves hiding behind love." He turned to Amina. "Your father's land is yours, as it always has been. May his soul rest knowing justice has been done." Amina fell to her knees, tears streaming freely down her face. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "May Allah bless you." "Thank you." Musa was led away. As the crowd dispersed, women came to Amina's side, holding her, blessing her, weeping with her. The sun rose higher, spreading its golden light over the village, over the fields, the trees, the rivers, and the land that had finally been set free. Later that evening, Amina stood at the edge of her father's farmland, the wind brushing through the green leaves. The earth beneath her feet was warm and alive. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Baba, I did it. Your land is safe." The breeze carried the scent of fresh maize and rain, the scent of renewal. Birds sang in the trees as if rejoicing with her. And for the first time in a long while, Amina smiled, Not the smile of a naive girl, but the quiet, steady smile of a woman who had walked through the fire and came out whole. Love had deceived her, pain has tested her, but truth has saved her. And as the sun sank behind the golden hills of Kagara, painting the sky in colors of hope, Amina knew her story was far from over. It was only just beginning. Thank you, my dear listeners, for watching today's story. I appreciate you. Please like, share, and subscribe. Till we meet again in another exciting tale. Bye.